Our next inductee has won the Alliance for Women in Media's Lifetime Achievement Award. She was 2016's Most Influential Woman in Radio, a legend by Radio Inc. And you probably know she was also the winner of the 2005 WWE Ladies Steel Cage Championship. We're happy to have her tonight. And if you don't, something you don't know, she's indirectly responsible for all those Meet the Fockers movies because of her son, who wrote those movies. Is John here tonight? John Hamburg. Ladies and gentlemen, to induct New York City's First Lady of Radio, Joan Hamburg, we have a man with a bookshelf full of Emmys and a Golden Globe. It's Hawkeye himself. Welcome, Alan Alda. Good to see you, my friend.
Thank you.
Take it over. Get all this on you.
Oh. Thank you. What a nice thing. This is so great. I love Joan Hamburg. You know, it says in the Bible, in the beginning was the Word. But what good are good words if the good words aren't spoken good? That's why God created Joan Hamburg. She's so personal with her audience. She connects with them. I mean, the Bible is a wonderful book. It's got great stories and great moral lessons, but it doesn't tell you how to get around New York on $5 a day. That was Joan's first book, How to Get Around New York on $5 a day, and that was how she edged into radio, and that was the beginning of a legendary career. And as the decades went on, she broadened her prospects. She broadened the horizons of her listeners. And she introduced them to the great cultural institutions of the city, the Metropolitan Opera, the delicatessen where you could get good whitefish. She has the ability to interview anybody with grace and humor, good humor. She has this extraordinary ability, and her listeners love her for this because she has this thing you can't fake, which is she actually enjoys and is curious about other people. When you're interviewed by her, you're in the presence of somebody, and you know it, you feel it. This is somebody who listens to what you say and responds to what you say. It's a conversation. She's really there, and her listeners know she's really there, and they know she's helping them with their lives. Joan is a helper. She's a helping person. She helps her listeners the same way she helps us as her friends. If you have a chance to listen to Joan, if you come from out of town and you can hear her on her podcast, and you haven't heard her here in New York, you got to do it because it's an extraordinary experience. She's loved by the people who listen to her. We love her. Her friends love her. Right now, she's probably cringing at her chair because she thinks this is extravagant praise because Joan is not self-involved. She never calls attention to herself, and somehow her sense of humor is so great. On the way home, she'll make a crack about this that'll put it into perspective because she always makes a joke about herself, never at anybody else's expense. But Joan, tonight, this is praise you really deserve. Take a look at this video as Joan's life passes before her eyes.
She's referred to as the First Lady of New York Radio, and for good reason. For more years than she'd care to admit, she's been around the microphone, letting listeners in on her life and her discoveries. New York on $5 a day. New York on $15 a day. What to buy, where to go, what's happening where, who's delighting audiences on Broadway. There's nothing Joan couldn't accomplish in 3 hours a day on radio.
It's time for the Joan Hamburg Show on WOR.
Good morning, everyone, and happy Thursday. That is me, and I'm very excited to be back in our studio.
WMCA, WOR, WABC. Joan Hamburg defined the way radio could be, should be, and is.
Joan, I think you should know the phone in my office didn't stop ringing all morning. What do you have for us today?
Well, today I have something a little different, John. Today we're going to talk about hair and free haircuts.
You connected. That takes talent. You became best friends for hundreds of thousands of radio listeners.
Joan Hamburg is not only deserving of this recognition of going into the National Radio Hall of Fame, she probably trained a lot of people who are already inducted into the Hall. Ms. Hamburg, congratulations.
Joan Hamburg is a 2018 inductee into the Radio Hall of Fame.
Joan Hamburg, come on up and get your award. Joan, it's my privilege and my great pleasure to induct you into the Radio Hall of Fame as a member of the class of 2018. You want me to hold it?
Thank you. And there's no greater communicator than Alan. You've got to listen to his podcast. He's great. And Johnny, I love your mother. Mine never told me to have fun. She said, get a husband. The rest will follow. Jim, it was really interesting hearing about your 9.5 minutes. You know, I wasn't discovered as an entertainer or a secret broadcaster. When they said, you're going to be in the Hall of Fame, I kept thinking, what happened here? What contributed to this? Well, it was two things. I was a lousy typist, and it involved tuna fish. I got out of school, and my generation, forget it if you didn't do shorthand or speed writing, you couldn't get a job. So I took myself to speed writing school. I had already written a book, didn't matter. Graduated from Barnard, no one cared. My speed writing got me a job with a magazine called Coupon Magazine. The editor said to me, okay, here's your job. You're gonna help us get advertising. Nothing's changed. And I have two guests who sleep on the floor every night. One is a comedian called Lenny Bruce. I had not a clue. I was a little girl from the 5 towns. Lenny Schmoose, Bruce meant nothing. The other guy was called Ouija, a famous photographer. I said, well, what am I supposed to do with them? Wake them up. And that's it. I'd get up, go to work every morning, shake them. Please wake up, Mr. Bruce, Mr. Ouija. They were so tanked, they didn't know whether it was day or night. But that was my job. And my boss, turned out, she was the queen of porn. I was so lucky. What a first job. Okay, so now my boss says to me, your first big job, you are going to write to the heads of major corporations. You're going to offer them an opportunity to place their ads in our magazine in 4-color with editorial usage of it. Now, I was a lefty turned righty, so you can imagine my speed writing. It was atrocious. No one could read it, including me. I had to memorize everything. So I write to the president of General Foods. Sir, I said, you can have, made a little typo, instead of ADS, ASS. You can have your ass in our magazine in 4-color with editorial usage of it for the mere price of $10,000. Well, you know what? He didn't like it. So he had my ass, and I got fired. And my boss said, she didn't have a nickel, porn wasn't making a lot of money in those days, and she said to me, can you write better than you type? So guess what? I was a writer. It was just amazing. And I ended up at New York Magazine, where the editor, and this is where radio comes in, the editor said, look, It's one thing to tell people where to go, what to do. We want you to be a radio star. You've got to audition for a major market radio station. There was a controversial host, Bob Grant. And he was constantly screaming, "Get off the phone." Everyone was suing him. And we want a woman, someone nice. I said, well, I may be nice, but what am I going to talk about every day? It was 2 hours a day. It was morning radio. So my boss said to me, "You're a woman. Think tuna fish." To this day, I don't have a clue what Peter Strauss meant. So I get on the air, and he's right there in the studio, mouthing, "Think tuna fish." My voice is shaking. I had never done such a thing. So what did I do? I told them where to buy tuna fish at a great bargain. That was the beginning of my career. A couple of weeks later, Carol Channing calls me, a big listener. She said, "Darling, I hate bananas, but I heard you tell people to go to the pier. They were selling bananas for 15 cents a pound. My car is filled with bananas. You must tell me what to do." My radio career, my listeners, God bless them, we saw the world. We would be freezing our behinds off in Korea in February, and one lady said to me in a plaintive voice, "Am I having a good time?" "Fabulous," I said. "There's nothing like Korea in February." What an experience. We saw the world together, and you have no idea. My daughter's not going to like this, but when you're on the air forever, your whole family becomes a caricature, as many of you know. We didn't do politics. We really did a lot of lifestyle, of family, of making a difference. So I'm talking on the air that my kid is living in Japan, her junior year abroad. She couldn't get far enough. And she says to me, she's going backpacking in Bangkok. I mention it. I get a call. "Hello, my name is Suki. I'm a nurse at New York Hospital. We want to host your daughter." These are listeners. I said, "Well, you don't have a teenage daughter. There's no way I could tell my kid that because she wouldn't go." "Don't worry," she said. My daughter calls me a little while later, a couple of weeks later. "Mom, the strangest thing happened. A guy in a livery is standing in the airport with a sign, 'Welcome, Elizabeth.'" I said, "So what happened?" She said, "What happened? I went home with him." And it turns out he was my listeners' chauffeur, the family, and it didn't enter their mind that that was the wrong thing to do. When my kids got into college, my mailbag was so full you couldn't even lift it. "Hooray, we're so grateful, we were so worried." We shared our lives. In fact, my son, one day, we're in Cappadocia, and we warned the listeners, "Do not touch the buffet. If it isn't cooked, you may not eat it." I forgot to mention, just because it was free did not give you an allowance. Comes breakfast, they're eating everything. 2 minutes later, sick as dogs. So my son said, "I now know what the communion wafer, the new communion wafer is." Every morning they'd stand there with their little tongues out, waiting for us to put an Imodium tablet on it. We saw the world together. Like everyone before me, I understand what it's about. We are so lucky because no matter what, with digital, with everything else, with social media, it's still about community. ABC Radio always says, "Live and local," and it's true. You're part of our lives, we're part of your lives. It is about public responsibility. We have the greatest gift in the world. We make a difference in people's lives. We give them information they can get nowhere else. So to all of you and to the Radio Hall of Fame, thank you so much, Craig Kitchen and crew, the board, the nominating committee, to my ABC family here tonight, Chad Lopez, Craig Schwabe, Mike McFay, and to all of you, I thank you for the gift. And to the next generation, radio still plays the most important part in anyone's life. And I thank you for this great honor.